All right, let's talk security, but probably not in the way you're thinking. Forget the high-tech gadgets for a second. We're going to look past all that and dive into the invisible architecture, the human systems that actually make everything work.
So let me just ask you this right off the bat. When you think about a security system, what's the most important part? Is it the super high-def 4K camera? The fancy biometric scanner? Maybe the big reinforced door?
Well, what if I told you it's none of those things? Seriously, the most critical piece of the puzzle might just be the one we almost always overlook. It's not about the technology. It's all about the people and the plan that's behind it. So in this explainer, we're basically going to build out what we're calling the human blueprint for security. We'll start with the training pyramid, then move on to the rules of the game, the tools you need, and finally, how to keep the whole thing running smoothly. Okay, first up, the absolute foundation of our blueprint, the people. But here's the thing, and this is key. Not everybody needs to know everything. The best security training is actually tiered. Think of it like a pyramid, where what you need to know depends entirely on what your job is. Right at the very top of that pyramid, you've got your system administrator. We call him the super user. This is going to be your security manager, maybe your main IT person. These folks have the keys to the kingdom, literally. They're the ones adding new employees to the system, changing door schedules because there's a holiday party, or figuring out why a camera suddenly went offline. Their whole goal is total mastery of the system. Okay, moving down a level, we have the operator. Think of this as your frontline security officer, or maybe the receptionist. They're not in there configuring the system, right? They're the ones using it, day in and day out. Their world is all about what we call buttonology, just knowing what button to push and when. They need to know how to clear an alarm, how to steer a PTZ camera to follow someone, or just how to print a visitor badge fast. For them, it's all about being competent and quick. So you can see these are two totally different worlds. The admin scope, the entire system. The operator scope, just the daily tasks. The admin is all about control and configuration, while the operator needs to be fast and competent. One person is backing up the database, the other is zooming in a camera. See? Totally different roles, which means they need totally different training. And then, at the very bottom of our pyramid, you've got, well, everyone else. And this is huge. This is all about creating a culture of security. We're talking about simple, drilled-in rules. Things like, hey, don't let someone tailgate behind you through a secure door. Or please don't prop that fire exit open. And of course, wear your badge where we can see it. This isn't about technical training at all. It's about getting everyone on the same page culturally. All right, so our people are trained up for their specific jobs. Great. But what actually tells them what to do when something happens? That brings us to the next piece of our blueprint, the security playbook. And really, this just comes down to having clear, written down instructions. Now, this playbook really has two key parts. First, you've got your standard operating procedures, or SOPs. Think of these as the big picture company-wide rules. For instance, the procedure for a bomb threat, that's going to be the same no matter where you are in the building. Then you have post orders. These are super specific, tactical instructions for one single location. So the guard at the front desk has post orders to check bags, but the guard at the loading dock has totally different orders to check shipping manifests. And listen, here's a rule that is absolutely non-negotiable. Those post orders have to be physically there, at the post. I mean, a hard copy in a binder or maybe up on a screen. Why is this so important? Well, just imagine a relief guard is covering that spot for the very first time. They need to be able to walk in, open that binder, read the orders, and do the job. Immediately. No guesswork involved. Okay, so we've got trained people. We've got a solid plan. But how do we make sure they actually do the right thing, especially when things get stressful? In an emergency. That leads us to the third part of our blueprint, the tools of the trade. And believe it or not, the most powerful tool here isn't some fancy gadget. It's something called a job aid. The best way to think about it is like a professional cheat sheet. You know how training can kind of fade from your memory over time? Well, a good job aid is always there. It's usually something simple and visual, right there at the workstation, designed to help you with tasks that are either really complex or that you just don't do very often. And this isn't some abstract theory either. A job aid can be super simple, like a laminated card with the top 10 keyboard shortcuts for the video system just taped right to the monitor. Or it could be a big flowchart on the wall that literally walks an operator step by step through exactly what to do if the fire alarm rings. What does this do? It cuts down on stress, and more importantly, it cuts down on mistakes.
Now, speaking of tools, let's talk about one that's critical but gets overlooked way too often: a strong password. This becomes a huge deal during the system handover. That moment when the new security system officially becomes yours. You're handed the keys, but sometimes those keys look a little something like this. Yep, a default username and password that is just shockingly common.
So here's the bottom line, and you can't miss this. The very first thing a physical security professional has to do when they take over a new system is change every single default password. No exceptions. Leaving them as they are, that's basically like leaving the front door of your shiny new building wide open for anyone to walk through.
And hey, while we're on the topic of that handover day, here's a little insider tip for you. You know your equipment's warranty? Well, that clock doesn't start ticking the day the stuff is bought. It usually starts on the day of what's called substantial completion, the official handover. That is a really important date you want to make sure you document.
Okay, our blueprint is almost finished. We've got our trained people, we've got a clear playbook, and we've got tools to support them. But a blueprint that just sits on paper is pretty much useless, right? It has to be tested in the real world. And that brings us to our final, critical section: keeping the system sharp.
Now, this might sound super obvious, but you'd be surprised how often this part gets forgotten. Security training is not a one-and-done event. It's not something you just check off a list and forget about. It has to be a continuous process. Because, let's face it, skills get rusty and procedures are always changing.
So, how do you actually test the system? Simple. You run drills. You simulate a real event. For instance, you could remotely trigger a door forced open alarm. The second you do it, you start a stopwatch. Now you watch. How long does it take the operator to even notice the alarm, to find the right camera, and to radio a guard to go check it out? A simple test like that will instantly show you where your weak points are. It tells you exactly what you need to cover in your next refresher training.
The really great security programs, they treat training like a continuous loop. It never really stops. You have the initial training when someone starts, then maybe 6 months later, there's a mandatory refresher. A few months after that, bam, you hit them with a surprise drill. And at the 1-year mark, everyone goes through a full annual retraining. And then the whole cycle just starts over again.
So when you look at this whole blueprint we've built, it really all boils down to one single powerful idea. All the tech, the fancy cameras, the sensors, the sophisticated software, all of it is only as good as the people, the plan, and the practice behind it. Period. And that leaves us with one last question to chew on. We spend a fortune, sometimes millions, on technology that's designed to stop an intruder from the outside. But who or what is designed to stop the human error that can happen on the inside? That's definitely something to think about.